Okay, we're gonna have an abbreviated program today, but we're gonna be talking, as you can see, listed as a topic of threats to democracy. Now, obviously, what a threat to democracy is going to be an opinion depending on who you are. There are folks who strongly believe that liberals, progressives are a threat to our democracy. Progressives are taking away rights and literally changing this country to something that the founding fathers never intended for it to be. And of course, there are people on the left that think the same thing about the right, particularly with number 45, President Trump. So I'm asking you folks, how do you feel about the possibility that we're headed down a path that is loaded with threats to democracy? What do I mean? I'm talking about candidates on the left and right entering the midterms that do not acknowledge that they will literally concede the election if they lose. They're doing this ahead of time. Now, keep in mind, we're only 5 days from the midterms, and despite hundreds of races in Congress, Senate, and gubernatorial races all around the country, there really is not a lot of people alleging that one side or the other is trying to steal the election, other than folks suggesting that they're trying to limit people from voting, particularly in Georgia, Texas, and Ohio. But how do you feel about people saying ahead of time that they will not concede if they lost? Obviously, we're talking about President Biden's speech yesterday, where he said that as well. Do you see that as a threat to democracy? Would that affect your vote for a candidate? If that candidate was offering what you believe was correct for America, that would help lead America down the right path, but they told you ahead of time, I'm not willing to concede if I lose. I'm not going to say the other side won regardless. How would that make you feel? Would that lead you to think differently of the candidate? That's what we're talking about. Looking in the comments. I think we will have a dictatorship soon, and the right is making it happen. Wow. Well, if we have a dictatorship, Frank 205, are you suggesting it'll be Trump? Or could it not be DeSantis or Cruz? Are you suggesting that Trump wants to be a dictatorship and he's going to be successful at that? Let me know in the comments. The left Democrats are I don't get your comment. CHA gendered the country. Republicans want you to read the Constitution. I didn't get the first half of that, but in regards to the Republicans wanting you to read the Constitution, let me know about the part that suggests it's okay to stop and frisk people. Let me know about the Constitution that suggests it's okay to do what Sheriff Joe Arpaio was doing in Arizona, stopping and frisking brown people and demanding that they show paperwork. Let me know about the part that says if an athlete takes a knee during the anthem, which is protected by the First Amendment, free speech, that they should be kicked off the field. As President Trump said, get that son of a bitch off the field. Let me know about all that in your constitutional claims there. Republicans have gone down the cliff. Wow. Elaborate on that. I would say it's circumstantial after the election. Okay, not everything is under the jurisdiction of the Constitution. 100% true, Fancy Prancy. Abortion being the number one topic right now. What is everyone saying, particularly those who defend the rolling back of Roe versus Wade? It was never in the Constitution to begin with. It was never a constitutionally protected right to begin with. So you're right, Fancy Prancy. And by the way, folks, tap the screens. Let your thumbs not be lazy. Start your boy out with 5,000 likes. I'd appreciate that. As you know, this is a MAGA-friendly program. I do not ban, block, or censor comments. In fact, MAGA are my preferred guests, but liberals are welcome. Okay, let's go straight to the box. I won't hold you up. Okay. Old timer, welcome back. About the potential of literally heading down a road that threatens democracy. Do you see any of that happening?
No, democracy's been under a threat since it was started.
How
It
so?
always, well, because everybody tries to revamp everything. It's not just democracy. I mean, first of all, we're a constitutional republic with democratic procedures, supposedly,
Okay.
but
Okay.
there's there's no one working form of government that doesn't go over changes in its lifetime and then come to an end.
Yeah, well, that's
The,
but and I get what you're saying. The amendments allow us to change. The Constitution was designed so you could get amendments with the right amount of votes. But what about people who are suggesting we're headed toward a dictatorship?
you know, it just depends on their interpretation of a dictatorship. I mean, I've got friends on left and right both are, and the more they feel like their rights are being lost or trampled on, the more they feel like it's "I told you so" and you're going to do it this way.
Right.
Dictatorship, where they don't realize that the Constitution, just like the state laws, the Constitution has it in there that the state can write their own laws, and that's where uh, Arapaho came into play. He wasn't doing anything to violate U.S. Constitution. He was doing things in accordance with Arizona state law,
Right. Well,
which
but
allowed it.
you'd have to admit the federal laws trump state law. So if like for instance, if the state of Illinois wanted to make a law that says you are subservient to black people, they can't write that as a law, can they? Because it's a states' right thing. They can't do that.
Well, federal law is supposed to trump state law, but it doesn't always. The federal government was established as a liaison between the states as an entity and foreign countries for purpose of trade.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
that's how it was originally established. So, a lot of people that are historians and understand a little bit about the Constitution past the preamble, they they tend to think that where they live is what they abide by, not what they live within. I mean, geographically speaking, no state has an identity because America is the state, and then
Okay.
the states themselves are considered territories or provinces or whatever by definition. But
Mhm.
it's everything's got a we're going to have. I hate to say it because you never know what's going to change in the Constitution if they do it, but I think they're going to have a convention of the states and straighten this out because as good as the Constitution was, and as much as they try to keep up with changing times, the Constitution itself does not keep up with changing times. That's the reason they.
What do you think would be discussed in a convention of the states? In other words, the states want to push back the power of the federal government. What is the states wanting that they believe the federal government is interfering with?
Well, one of them is the true right to self autonomy for,
Okay.
for for men and women. Nobody. If you look at U.S. Constitution and Code, everybody that's born an American citizen is born into militia, and they're born with a number on them, and they are born as government property. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, with no right to self autonomy, the government can literally take all the peoples that are U.S. citizens and do with what they want to because we're a
That's a good
commodity.
point. That's a good point. So let me ask you this question. And I hate to invoke race in it, but I'm gonna do it. And I want to get your opinion on it. Like I always say, I don't ban, block, or censor. So whatever the hell you say, we're gonna work with that. But what if a person like myself said that self autonomy for the states sounds a hell of a lot like the Confederacy fighting to maintain slavery, and I'm afraid of certain states having self autonomy because they're going to roll back my civil rights. How would you convince me or reassure me that that's not the case?
Well, first we can look at history and learn from it. I mean, the North attacked the South. It wasn't over a slavery thing. It was over economics and the workforce. Um, because at the time, the North didn't want to attack the South, and the South didn't want to fight the North. They just wanted to
Wait,
maintain
wait,
status
you
quo.
said the North attacked the South. Why did they have a problem with the South? What were they attacking the South for?
To gain workforce.
They were attacking the South to steal workers from the South.
Yeah, the workforce, the Industrial Revolution came around. They didn't have the workforce that the South had.
So they were going to, I mean, because the workforce in the South was predominantly slaves, were they not?
Not all of them.
But a large portion of their workforce was slaves. You don't see that?
Well, a large portion that we're being told about was slaves, but just like one of my great grandfathers uh, was a black native, and another great grandfather was what I would call a redneck because he worked right alongside of him in the field. That's how the family met and got together. Uh,
So, but if the North attacked the South for the workforce purposes, as you're suggesting, what were they going to do? Steal people who were working in the South and displace them and move them up north?
well, it's what it looks like, and in portions of history, if you study, if you read about it and actually learn it in a broad scope and not just a one-sided event. Uh, you
But
know,
how can you do that in a free society? That essentially is slavery. That's no different than going to Africa and forcing people to come to the United States and work. You're saying the North was in favor of slavery of white people? Because you said you're not talking about the slave workforce of the South. So what the North was going to go to the South and snatch up white people and bring
well,
them back north?
yeah, everybody's an indentured servant. I mean, if you look at it, then where was slavery outlawed? It was outlawed south of the Mason-Dixon line. It wasn't outlawed north of it.
Okay. So the North, so in other words, the North was promoting slavery as well, then, just for white people.
Yeah, and Irish and English and whoever else was coming around. I mean, but we get past that, so we have to learn from the history and realize that the basis of the American Civil War was economic trade pitting brother against brother. So economy has got a little bit to do with government because they spend our money like it's their own piggy bank, and they put the burden and the oppression on us. So
Right.
the big thing is not going to be is it a north south. It's going to be an American citizen against the U.S. government. Is if it comes to a civil war, and the American
Right.
citizen,
I can see that.
we're
Yeah.
tired of the oppression and depression. I'm gonna stand with my blue collar brother and my poor brother and over any political power.
Fair enough. All right, okay, old Tim. I do got to move it on, but I'll give you the last word. I will say this in regards to folks wanting smaller government, states' rights. The only reason, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the only reason why we have had government, federal government, get so big is because the individual states have abused their power, and I'm talking about like the EPA. Environmental Protection Agency. Why did they get so big? Because people didn't give a shit about the environment. Why do we have botanical gardens and we have, protected wetlands? Because folks in search of capitalism, in search of making money, would kill every animal, shoot every eagle they could. So you have to have federal laws. Otherwise, if you leave it to the states, let's take a state like Wisconsin or Minnesota. They utilize the Mississippi River, but the river flows south. The people at the end of the river, like Mississippi and Louisiana, would receive all the trash from Wisconsin and Minnesota. But Wisconsin and Minnesota has nothing to lose by dumping it because nature's going to sweep it away. If you didn't have a federal government, why would Wisconsin and Minnesota even give a shit about what's being dumped in the Mississippi River, knowing it's going downstream? So my point
Well,
I'm making is the federal government has expanded because the people have been irresponsible. I'll give you the last word though.
that's true. The federal government has expanded because the peoples have been irresponsible, but it's not the peoples that are irresponsible. It's the powers in the states that are irresponsible. I mean,
Okay.
look at California. The federal government won't intervene on Newsom's burn ban, and look how because he doesn't do anything to keep the underbrush from growing up and the bad timbers from drying up. He doesn't do anything to protect and conserve the forest. So they have flash fires that the rest of the United States has got to bail them out every year on. And
Yeah.
you know,
Well, what should happen is those other states, knowing that California is doing that, just like the example I used of Wisconsin dumping in the Mississippi River, those other states should sue California in regards to the federal government to get them to put limitations and stop that. But I got to move it on, old timer. You know what we do? Good talk.
we do it. Have a blessed day,
Absolutely.
brother.
You too. Now, say, and I say this all the time in regards to not banning, blocking, or censoring anyone. This is a MAGA friendly program. MAGA are my preferred guest. The fact that you disagree with the host doesn't mean anything. And I will say, Old Timer is a friend of the program. However, the education he was taught is different than what I was taught. I've never heard, so he's educated me today because I've never heard that the North invaded the South with intention of snatching up white people to make them work in the North. I've never heard that before, which would essentially mean that the North was in favor of enslaving whites. Because if I come to your town and take people away from there by force, because he's saying that's what the war was started over, then that's slavery. That literally is forced slavery. But it's a new one to me. Let me go back to the box. Anthony, 6'1", 9. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the program.
What's going on, Chief?
Not much at all.
Can
I'm
you
being
hear me?
educated today, man. I'm being educated.
Man, do not swallow any of that shit.
I gotta let the people speak. I gotta let the
I'm
people speak.
on here thinking I was watching the Olympics, all the gymnastics I saw.
So obviously you disagree with my last caller.
Not with everything he said. I don't disagree with everything he said because
Okay.
what he was saying, as far as the government and how the people in this country are feeling, yeah, he's right. But where
Yeah,
he
but
started,
but what about my argument, my counter argument that even though people are pissed off with big government didn't start in a vacuum. There's a reason you have FDA. There's a reason you have the CDC. There's a reason you have these organizations, and it is because the people left to their own devices would lie, do anything they could to make money. I had a guest on the other day that was suggesting that getting rid of cigarettes and going to vaping is healthy. But she works for a vaping company. So, yeah, if you leave it up to the states, you have the same type of corruption just on a statewide level.
um, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion,
Okay.
as long as we have 100 senators and the Congress the way that we have it, there's always
Okay.
going to be financial influence. It's 2022. There are better ways to get the opinion of every American in America than to have those 100 people run the risk of being corrupted by businesses. What we have
Well,
in America,
but, but you could go from 100 senators to 500 senators. There's enough money to corrupt all 500.
oh yeah. No, what I was saying is and I don't have the answer because if I had the answer, I'd be running for president. But what I'm
You ain't
saying
got the
is,
you ain't got the answer, Sway. You
we need to have a more and see this. And I hate the movement that we've been on for the last 20 years because as I grew up, all you heard about was American democracy, American democracy,
ain't.
American democracy. Where now, as democracy has failed the majority, where democracy has failed the majority, now all you hear about is the Republic of America, the
I
Republic of
don't
America.
know. I don't buy that. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'll give you my hat in the foreground here as an example. The
Talk
phrase
to
for the Trump administration was "Make America Great Again," and my counterpoint was always this. And thank you, Susan. That's beautiful. Thank you, Susan. My response has always been this. There is no point in history that as an African American, as a minority, that I would rather go back to in hopes of making America great again. I think right now in
Oh,
20,
facts.
yeah, for blacks, definitely. I believe in 2022, this is the best it has ever been for us. There is not a single day in U.S. history. So when you say that we're losing democracy, I look back and say, well, shit, when did we have it? When would you rather go back to that is more democratic for you than it is right now? And I would suggest there is no period of that.
I mean, I agree with that frame of thought. I definitely agree with that frame of thought as far as in 2022, if you're going from the single standpoint of minorities in America, you're right. There has not been a better
Well,
time in
women,
America for
but it's
minorities.
not just women also.
I
What period
know
is better for women?
that's a minority too now.
There's more. Isn't
That's
there
a
more
minority
women?
too.
Isn't there more women than men?
When we're talking about America
Right.
and how the system is set up, women, even though they're the numerical majority, they are still a minority class, and they have been treated thus so in this country.
Okay. I don't
There,
know if
there's
I. Yeah, I don't know if I buy that. I can understand that
how
women
they had to
historically
fight.
have been.
They had to fight for rights just like every other minority in this country.
Yeah, they did have to fight for rights. They are treated like minorities, but officially they are
Yes,
not minorities. Is the point I'm trying to make.
yeah, numerically, yeah, I
Okay.
agree with you there.
Fair point. Fair point.
Um, there's only been one group in this country that has not been treated as a minority in this country.
Yeah. I get that. So let me ask you the question that we were starting the entire post about. And by the way, folks who are tuned in, let your thumbs not be lazy. Tap the screen, get your boy up to 10,000 likes. You know what I always ask. Do not ban, block, or censor. It's a MAGA friendly program. I get at spiel on every program. But asking you, Anthony, the question, if a candidate that one that you favor, one that you believe is the right person for leading America, refuses to admit that they will ignite if they lose the race. In other words, if I lose, I refuse to admit that I lost. I refuse to concede. If they're announcing that ahead of time before the election, would that affect your vote towards that candidate? If they make it clear they may not concede even if they lose.
I would like to say that it would. I would like to say that it would.
Okay.
Um, Prime example in this election right now, with what I hear on the daily from the other side, because I've been a independent since I was 18 years old when I first signed my registration card. Have I always voted Democratic? Yes, and we understand why. Now, if today and time, if somebody on the left said that they would contest a vote no matter what, with what I see on the right on a daily basis, I don't know if it would actually sway my vote.
So you understand the right is saying exactly what you're saying. But Anthony, I gotta move it
Yeah,
on. But I would continue. I think it should matter because
it should, and I said that. I said that it should matter,
yeah.
and in normal times it would matter. But we've heard it from them for the last 8 years, damn near. We've heard it from them
Well,
for the last
but
eight years.
they're going to bring up Hillary Clinton also refusing to say she lost as well. I mean, hell, even when Hillary Clinton in 2007 lost in the primaries to Obama, it took her into the middle of summer to concede. So it's not just a Republican thing, though.
But she did concede to Donald Trump.
After months of denying it, I mean, she didn't want to
She
concede to
did not.
Obama.
She okay. To Obama, I get it, and yeah, it's bad on both sides.
Yeah, that's the point I made. She conceded to Trump, but she definitely refused to concede to Obama in the primaries for
And
quite a
we all
while,
know
for
and we
several
all know
months.
what they did to, and we all know what they did to Bernie. So, yeah, it's bad on both sides.
I can have a different conversation with you about Bernie, but I gotta go, Anthony.
All
Good
right,
talk.
Chief. Yo,
All right, man. Okay. And comments. Hell no. Wash the Holy Spirit. Did you not read it yet? Smile. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyone who says they're liberal should 100% use their platform to speak out for the people of Iran. Well, they're too busy speaking out for the people of the Ukraine right now. The people of Iran, no doubt about it, are being oppressed. But as a liberal that is against oppression, if you speak out against everyone that's being oppressed, you will never stop talking. I would submit to you that most women in the Middle East are being oppressed. At the beginning, I guess at the end of the day, it's going to be up to those people to fight for their own freedom, just like here in America, when African Americans were being oppressed. It took for African Americans to rise up and get out of that shit. It wasn't like France or Germany or England or somebody was going to come over here and really push with the dignitaries in the United States to free black people. I mean, they knew what was happening, and they were not going to do anything about it. So that's likely to happen in other places. Clinton conceded the next day in 2016. You're talking, Bree, you're talking about with Trump. She didn't do that with Obama. When Obama won the election in 2008, he had to get past Hillary Clinton. So she didn't just run in 2016 against Trump. She also ran in the 2008 election against Obama. And when she lost to Obama, she didn't concede for several months. And keep in mind also, for folks who are pissed off about all birtherism claims that Trump suggested Barack Obama being born in Kenya, that also started with Hillary Clinton. Trump just took the shit way too far. But Hillary Clinton was the one that started that. And I agree with you, what does that says? Tony knows. You says primaries are different. Yeah, primaries are different. But that doesn't mean you don't concede. Losing is losing. If you lose the election, you concede the loss. Doesn't mean you don't get to refuse to see because it's a primary. You're still dividing your party. Just like Bernie Sanders, I was trying to tell the last call, I said we could talk about Bernie Sanders another time, but the Bernie Sanders crowd and the Hillary Clinton crowd also clashed a hell of a lot in 2016. When you don't concede, you divide your own party up. Let's say Trump runs against Ron DeSantis in 2024, and DeSantis beats Trump, and Trump refuses to concede or suggest that Ron DeSantis cheated, like he tried to suggest Ted Cruz was cheating in 2016. You can divide the party up. There's a hell of a lot of people that support Trump, and Ron DeSantis has a huge base. If in the primary, one of them starts saying the other one cheated, you can divide your own party up in the same manner that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders divided up the Democratic Party. Okay, looking in the comments. How many GOP candidates kept running against Trump for months in those primaries? Tarum, I can't pronounce the name, but that's an interesting question because there was some cheating on the Republican side of the aisle that you heard very little about. What am I talking about? In 2020, Trump had people trying to primary him. I believe it was 4 different Republicans. They were not just going to sit back and let Trump automatically get the Republican nomination so that he could have a second term. There were Republicans that tried to primary him, which is not normal. Obama for his second term, Bill Clinton for his second term, George W. Bush for his second term. Usually the party just stands behind the current guy, the incumbent, and lets him go. But because Trump was very controversial, there were 4 Republicans that tried to primary Trump to become the Republican nominee. The Republican Party, states like Arizona, if I'm correct, Kansas, if I'm correct, announced early that they were giving their electoral votes to Trump. They didn't even hold the election. They prevented a primary from even happening by announcing ahead of time, we're endorsing Trump. Meaning that the people of those states, if they were Republican, had no chance to entertain voting for another Republican nominee for president. Those states cheated those 4 people out. I would invite you to not take a single word I'm saying, do your homework on it. Google the 4 Republicans that tried to primary Trump. Bing or DuckDuckGoose or whatever hell site you use. You should easily be able to find this out. Looking in the comment section, California did that too. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is that is cheating. That someone like Trump, who has made a hell of a lot of noise against cheaters, didn't say anything about. But the Republicans in those states literally were cheated out of their vote. They didn't have a chance to decide if they wanted Trump moving forward or not. The state just stepped up and said, screw you. All right, DeSantis Airlines sending rich white liberal hypocrites. I don't get all of that. Pete, your comment says DeSantis Airlines sending rich white liberal hypocrites, apologists, some illegals too. There's way too much there for me to unpack. Your righteous beliefs that you're being fair is hurting the Democrats and democratic principles. What righteous beliefs am I promoting? The only righteous belief promoted on this program is that you have the right to say whatever the hell you want without fear of being blocked, banned, or censored, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. That is a solemn promise I make for every single live I do. The fact that you may disagree with me doesn't mean a damn thing here. That is about as righteous as I will ever try to be on this program. If you want a program where there are liberals constantly bashing Republicans, there are plenty of places you can go on social media for that. If you want a program where everyone in the box is wearing a red hat, everything Democratic is stupid, there are places you can go for that as well. This program here features folks from both sides of the aisle having civil dialogue without fear of being banned, blocked, or censored. That has been the purpose of this from day one. If that doesn't fit your goals, there are places you can swipe. Looking in the box, unapologetic black man. Good afternoon, sir.
How's it going?
I'm learning things, man. I had a caller on here a while ago that told me the North invaded the South in hopes of stealing their labor. I had never heard that before.
There's going to be a lot of things you're not going to hear with this new education system that people are learning. I don't know where people are. I mean, again,
Well,
me
go
and
ahead.
you, we're the Dewey Decimal kids. We grew up
The
off,
Dewey.
we grew up off the Dewey Decimal system. That's how we had to do our research. So now
Well,
having technology where you can just type in something and get the entire catalog of knowledge and education, and you can spend time and read up. People fail to do that. People are like, I don't like that shit. My mama told me. My mama told me in 1953. Turn straight into the water boy on us, and we have to stop with that shit. We have to stop listening to our mamas, our aunties, unless they're going to tell us the true history. But if we're going to talk about facts and data and evidence and trying to make a better world, then we got to stop saying, I think, I feel, I believe. We have to learn from
Well,
each other.
I will tell you this. I'm gonna give a shout out to my late granny. May she rest in peace. I've had so many people come through the program, particularly on the right, and tell me a party switch during the civil rights era never happened. And I have to give my grandmother credit because, yeah, she told me about that at a young age. So, and she lived through it. So I've talked to people who actually have lived through it, as opposed to folks who are saying it didn't happen. Now, I do believe that a little bit of research, and I think that the amount of evidence that a party switch took place is insurmountable. But yeah, that was something I learned first from my grandparents.
I think that's the problem with a lot of society now is that the atrocities that the older people have given us, the knowledge, the stories that they passed down, they want us to forget those.
Yeah.
But they want us to remember all the good things, even though you can look up Gallup polls, you can look up news polls in 1965, 53% of America, and I'm just doing the math because there was lower percentage up in the North and a higher percentage, like 68, 69%. But the average America was like 53% of Americans didn't want integration. They didn't want affirmative
Yeah.
action. They didn't want black people to move into their neighborhoods. They didn't want black people to be standing in line with them at the banks. They didn't want black kids being able to go to the pools and the playgrounds with their kids. We have to realize that they taught their kids the same ideology. That's why there was a big ideology switch also with the parties that people fail to realize. We watch Republicans cater to racism, to white nationalists, to evangelists, to extremists, and the left does it too, but not to the extreme.
It's hard for me to counter that. I mean, I don't know. I consider myself educated. I have a adverse effect when I see people carrying around a Confederate flag and things like that. And I know the Confederate South, the Democrats were the party of slavery. The Democrats were the party of Confederacy. And when I see Republicans carrying it around, to me, that's all the evidence I need that a switch took place. Because I ask people all the time, if no switch happened, what made the Republicans all of a sudden start idolizing Democratic heroes? I mean, the Confederate, you see the statues, whether it's General Lee or Stonewall Jackson, all of those people were part of the Democrat Party of slavery. So why is the
Mhm.
Republicans the ones that are defending all of these people and picking up all of these symbols? So
And this is
I,
what
I,
my rebuttal to them is always okay. If it wasn't a switch, then thank you for finally admitting that black people aren't dumb. We watched the Republican Party cater, adopt, and bring on white nationals, like I said, white supremacists, the KKK, and then you want to say that black people on a Democratic plantation. No, we're literally fleeing away from your party who's letting guys in sheets ride on horses in our neighborhoods. So
well, I
yes,
don't know about that. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You guys
if
on
there wasn't a switch, then like I said, white people are admitting that our ancestors watch the Republican Party let the KKK run in towns like Tulsa, Lake Lanier, Clearwater. Like there, I can name hundreds of
yeah,
towns
but I'm
that
talking
the
about some
Republican
of that.
Party let.
Yeah, but some of that I mean, Tulsa is obviously 100 years ago. I'm not downplaying what happened in Tulsa with
I
Black
can tell
Wall
you
Street, but
about a town in 1941 that the Republican Party let come in. Look up Lake Lanier. Republican Party let white nationalists come in black towns
what
from
about after? Wait a
1861
minute, but
all the
what
way
about
up to.
after? What about after the Civil Rights Act? You're still coming up with stuff that's 180, 90 years old. What about stuff in modern time? You're talking about people walking around black towns with sheets and things like that on. Are you suggesting that that's happening
Again,
in modern
again,
time?
no, I'm just telling you that people think
Okay.
that the switch happened overnight. It's a longevity of the switch from especially like in the southern states. It took longer for black people to switch over than it did in the north because in the south they still had dictating our politicians who ran our districts and our representatives were chosen still by them majority of the time. Up north, we saw a little more diversity. We saw it. So when I say that, I mean, even if I say about the 60s and 70s, and people say, well, what about that? Like you just said. Well, let's talk about it. Black people watched the CIA put drugs in our neighborhood. Black people watched that you gave men who flew over megatons of cocaine getting out of jail the night of, but then a black man will get caught with one bag and he now in jail for life. Black people have seen Republican
Yeah,
Party
yeah, that
switch
I
our
don't disagree
neighborhood.
with. Yeah, that I don't disagree.
They
Real
watch.
quick, hang on a second. Real quick in the comments, the real one says, "BS. There's no switch. Republicans ran as the anti-slavery party," and that goes back to what I asked. If the Republicans ran as the anti-slavery party, which is true, why are they defending all of the folks that fought for slavery now? When you say protect history and you're defending statues, these are people that were fighting to continue slavery, and they were Democrats, by the way. So you're saying no party switch happened, but you're having Republicans willing to fight tooth and nail to defend Democrats. So clearly, something looks weird there. I'm just saying that. But go ahead,
It's
black man.
really nothing weird. It's part of the Daughters of the Confederacy teaching. After
Yeah.
you learn the lies, you have to learn how to gaslight to cover up a lie. You remember our parents used to tell us never tell a lie because you have to tell a lie to make to cover up that lie, and a lie to cover up that lie, and it never ends. So now you have a large portion of conservatives and Republican Party who have no excuse for their
Fair point.
idiocracy. I mean, let's just be real. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain why you're saying that black people have not noticed the Republican Party from the 60s are against us. I'm tired of large part of America keep saying that, oh, black people are just dumb. No, we're not dumb. We're watching it. We
Yeah.
see that states like Mississippi and Tennessee are literally talking about slavery. We see a 6-3 conservative
Wait, wait,
party
wait. You saying Mississippi is talking about slavery? What do you mean by that?
that
I
it's
haven't
it's
heard that.
being brought up into the Supreme Court again about what's black. What that's what they're bringing back into court in like southern states, Mississippi, Tennessee, and shit. They're bringing that back up. What do we
Oh,
consider black? Just like DeSantis now in Florida is saying that basically like Kanye, slavery was a choice. It was voluntarily. We can't call Christopher Columbus
yeah.
a bad guy. Like we're starting to watch the Southern strategy come back
I get
up,
what
and
you're
now
saying.
we have ignorance in America that's not no because they did not learn it.
All right. Well, I got to move it on, black man. You know what I got to do. Appreciate you
Yes,
coming through. All right.
always a pleasure.
Okay. Looking in the comments, real quick, I wanted to respond to Joe Gonzalez. You said, talking to the host, yours truly, should you erase that history though? I don't understand, and that's a fair question. I hear it all the time. I do not understand why so many people believe taking down a statue erases history. If you fall in love with a woman and you put a tattoo on your body with her name on it, and you break up with the bride and remove the tattoo, it doesn't take away the history that you were banging her at one time. Removing a tribute to history doesn't erase the fact that these things took place. I don't get why people keep saying that. I could give you a host of statues, whether it's Adolf in Germany, Saddam Hussein in Iraq. There are a host of statues that have been removed in countries and completely outlawed. Did the history of these people disappear? Has the history of Saddam Hussein completely been eradicated because there's no statues of him anymore? That makes no sense at all. So understand that a statue is a tribute to history. History cannot be erased. You can lie about it, you can be dishonest about it, but what happened happened. If I smack you in the face and tell you I was giving you a hug, I can lie about the history of me smacking the shit out of you. But in reality, you got smacked. Period. So you can't erase history. History happened. Get out the notion that get away from the notion that you're erasing history. Derek Daniel Harris. Sounds like a new caller. Yes, Daniel. Good. Appreciate you guys that are following the program. Tap the screen. Get your boy up to 15,000 likes. That would be greatly appreciated. MAGA friendly program all day. What's going on, Daniel?
Hey, what's going on, handsome liberal? Where'd you get that title, handsome liberal? Was that a self description, or did your wife call you that, or mom call you? Where'd you get that from?
It came from a few locations, but we'll just say self-titled for now.
Hey, I got to tell you, I love the way that you have dialogue here because obviously there's strong opinions that get passed around back and forth. And
Sure.
I think it's important that we understand that we're going to have arguments with our wives, we're going to have arguments with our mom and dad, our brothers and sisters. And there's a right way to go about it, and I think that that's what you're demonstrating right here. And I got to tell you, I got to tip my hat
Absolutely
to
a pleasure. Appreciate that. Appreciate the compliment. Absolutely a pleasure.
it.
So, what do
And
you think
so
about candidates? What do you think about candidates announcing ahead of time that they're not comfortable conceding, even if they lose?
I don't think that's a good idea at all. We have to have confidence in the system, and if you don't have confidence in the system, you have to have I don't know, you have to have proper policing over the system. I honestly don't know how they count votes. I don't know what that looks like. I know that there were some strange things going on where they're covering up windows so the public couldn't look in and see him counting stuff, and some accusations of some boxes of votes being hidden under tables and whatnot. And it just looked fishy, you know.
Yeah.
Why not have visibility so we could just see what's going on, like what's really going
Well,
on?
the problem when you have, and I'm fine with visibility. I am a strong proponent of transparency. However, I don't want folks showing up to witness the election with an AR-15 on their back. We got places where people are showing up to the polling places armed. That's intimidating. I don't think that helps anything out, because we've gotten to a position now where we do not trust the government. So the people are rising up and saying, let us govern ourselves, when the people have a history of oppressing and mistreating people. That's the reason you got government to begin with. But I'm not a fan of going to vote somewhere and there are armed people standing there that I know do not want my candidates to win. How am I supposed to view that?
Well, I don't know what everybody else's experiences are. Only I live in California, and I've never seen any armed people. Everyone seems to be treating each other respectful. Obviously, I live in a very left-leaning state, and so sometimes if you're
Yeah.
a right-leaning, you get looked up and down and sideways, you know. And so, you know, there's different ways of making somebody feel comfortable or uncomfortable. But I have never seen armed people totally against it. That shows a show of force, looks very militant, you know, and looks like any of the
Right.
totalitarian governments of the past. But Handsome, I wanted to address the comments made about the big switch, and I'm
Sure.
trying to figure that out. I'm a student of history. I'm trying to figure it out. And so if there's a switch, there has to be a number of representatives in the government that move from one party to another. So what we do is we go and we look at all the representatives in the Senate and all the representatives in the House, and we see what if over time, because I noticed you had a caller that said it happened over time, and say, okay, well, let's track it over time. I know, for example, Arlen Specter was a declared Republican, then he switched to Democrat, then he switched back to Republican, and I may have that wrong where he went from party to party. He did go from party to party. I don't know where he started or where he ended up, but so there's examples where we can go back and look, okay, in such and such a year, in 1970, 19 whatever, and look and see who are the representatives and what party do they represent. There's a professor, her name's Carol Swain from Vanderbilt University. I listened to her talk about how she had a particular ideology, and that switch idea came to her, was addressed to her, and she looked it up and didn't see there was, I think, two candidates that or two representatives, and I don't know if it was from the House or the Senate, that did switch parties. And so that doesn't sound like a major switch. But I don't want to spend too much time on
But
that because I think more.
look at
Go
the
ahead. Go ahead.
but look at the action. Look at the action of the actions of the people. If one group freed African Americans, they're going to be loyal to that group. I mean, if you give us civil rights, if you give us freedom, we're certainly going to be loyal to you as opposed to a group that does not. So if the Republicans, which we know as is a historical fact, the Republicans being under Lincoln did give us freedom. Why did we turn our backs on Republicans? That didn't happen in a vacuum. In the argument that, well, the media or the Democrats are so smart that they convinced all the black people to come on his side doesn't make sense. I mean, you just look at where the people who were freed are voting. That should tell you something right there. The people have switched. You don't see white supremacists idolizing the legislation and the proposals of the Democratic Party. They're on the Republican side. So it doesn't make sense for even a white supremacist to now be voting with the party that freed slaves. Clearly, something happened. The same thing with the Confederate flag. There's no denying that the Confederate States were Democrats. That was a party of slavery. Why is that flag now being flown in so many Republican circles? Something clearly switched. There's no way to explain away all of that stuff.
Right. So I love what you said there. We do need to understand where all this comes from. And I remember as a kid, a lot of the music that I listened to, that, you know, whether it's country or rock or whatever, some of them would have the Confederate flag in the background. And I just didn't pay any attention to it or history. And I loved history in school. But for some
Okay.
reason, nobody really discussed it with me. So on my own, I had to go back and look and find out the Confederate flag is actually the Confederate battle flag, And so I was like, okay, so what was their ideology? Did they make a new constitution? Sure enough, did. So I looked it up, and they kept slavery in their constitution. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely against that. If I ever see a Confederate flag, I'm going to consider that flag racist. And I politically, I lean more right because I feel like less government is more the answer. And I
So
know that there's
if you consider the Confederate flag racist, why do you believe so many right wingers are okay with that flag? I mean, the Civil War obviously ended hundreds of years ago. What is the purpose of walking around in 2022 waving that flag all over the place?
Yeah, well, if they're around me and you are going to tell them, "Hey guys, let's do a little history search. Let's open up the history books and see what's the history of that." And I think we could sway people by saying, "Look, guys, this has a history of racism. Look right here. Here's the Confederate Constitution keeping slavery as law. Do you want that? You're representing that, and if we can get that through to them, we could change their minds." I don't see it as a popular. I don't see it as a popular thing out here where I'm at. I don't see people walking around waving. What
Where
was
are
that
you at? What
program?
state are you in?
What's that?
What state are you in?
I'm in Southern California.
Okay, that's why you're in a liberal area. You're not. I'm talking about the South: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida,
Mm.
Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky. That flag is all over the place in those states. The original slave states. California wasn't part of that.
Yeah, I can't speak for that. I'd have to go down and visit. I lived in Oklahoma for a little bit, so I don't know if I really saw it there. I just think it's a general lack of understanding, and we need to put the information out there and let them know. The Confederacy kept the Constitution intact to a point, and then they kept slavery as law, and so it's terrible. It should be opposed. It's funny. I think it was Lincoln that said it's interesting how the people that are for slavery only as long as it's not them. So that tells me
Yeah.
how wrong it is. And so I don't live in those states, Handsome, so I don't know what it's like down there. But I think with the big switch idea and all that stuff, I think we just need to do a little bit more research and find out what candidates switched and what is our ideology. I think we need to create more memes and like what you're doing. What you got, 16.2. I don't know how many people are on your channel, but just your audience, expose them. Say, hey, look, let's do some research. Everybody's got fingers. Do some research. Use your search engines and find out what was the Confederacy's constitution. You see slavery in there, boom, instantly. That's terrible.
What you have to understand is that I believe it was called the Sisters of the Confederacy or whatever the name it was. But after the Civil War, there was an active group that literally sought to mislead people about history. No different than if the small mustache guy had have won World War II in Germany, the Holocaust would have never happened. Because the Confederates in this country were allowed to tell history, they deliberately misled folks about it. So even if you showed them the stuff you're talking about, they're not going to believe it, or they have counter articles and counter books to show the opposite because there is so much misleading stuff out there.
Right.
I mean, so I don't know how you can convince the unconvincible. But listen, I got to move it on, man. You know how
good
we
talking to
do.
you. Good talking.
Absolutely a
Peace out.
pleasure. You're always welcome back. You're always welcome back. All right, looking in the comments. Unapologetic black man. This is a comment to him. Go look at what that flag means as far as the lines, the color, the design. Taz, in regards to the stars and bars, you could be absolutely correct in saying that the flag means something else. Maybe it means pride and heritage or whatever. That could be the case. That could be absolutely true. Just like I can show you the swastika and tell you about groups that used it long before Adolf and the Third Reich ever adopted it. Does that make you feel more comfortable walking around with the swastika because its original meaning was peaceful? No, it does not, because once you adopt that symbol and start committing atrocities under it, the original meaning has lost its face. But you're right. Maybe in the beginning it meant something peaceful or something of that nature. But you're not going to go walking around with the swastika trying to explain to people what it meant in 800 AD and how peaceful it is. Nobody's going to hear that. But good luck trying. Let me go back to the box. Marquis, I cannot pronounce that. One Day One, whatever the case may be. Welcome to.
Real. Mark, can you hear me?
Hello. How you
Okay.
doing?
What is it, sir?
My name is Mark. It's nice to meet you.
Mark, good to meet you as well. What do you think about what's going on? What's on your mind?
Well, this is my first time seeing you, and I'm interested in well, I saw your name, the Handsome Liberal, and
Yeah.
I just want to have a short dialogue with you with a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Let me have it.
All right. Um, so, why should I be a liberal in today's America?
Well, that's a good question. First, let me ask you this. How do you feel about the Second Amendment? You there?
As far as bearing arms specifically, yes, there was a
Yeah.
slight
Do you
delay. I
believe?
apologize.
Okay. Do you believe citizens should have the right to bear arms and it shall not be infringed upon?
And should have the right to bear arms.
Yeah. You asked me why should you be a liberal. So the reason I'm asking you these questions is to see where you stand on issues. There may not be any reason you should be a liberal, but I want to ask how you stand. I mean, if you believe the Confederate flag, like we're talking about, is pride and heritage, the switch never happened, you could be like Kanye West. There may not be any reason you should be a liberal. So it depends on where you stand on the issues.
Are you asking me about the Confederate flag?
Well, I asked you first about the Second Amendment. Do you believe citizens should have an uninfringed right to bear arms, whatever they want?
Um, yeah, uninfringed at this point in day and age. N- Damn, that's hard. I believe the Constitution needs to be updated, but I do also think citizens should have an ability to bear arms without bearing the most destructive of them.
What about a woman wanting to terminate a pregnancy? Do you believe she should be stopped by the government?
No.
You sounding
Abs-
real liberal to me. You sounding real liberal to me right now.
well, the reason why I ask on because when I go on conservative lives, they tell me I'm really conservative too when they ask me questions like this. And I suppose the reason why I'm actually asking these things is I want to talk about the way people vote. And my next question for you is, can we talk about your vote and how you vote?
Sure. Well, we can certainly do that, but to top off your last question, in which you asked me why you should vote liberal, my response after hearing your statement would be is because liberals are fighting for what you tend to believe in. At this point, if you vote Republican based on what you said, I believe you're voting against your own self-interest. Now go with your second question.
All right. Um, can we talk about your vote and how you vote?
Okay, what do you want to know about it?
So I I'm confused on labels necessarily regarding liberal and the clearly the other portion being conservative, being the other side. I'm recently finding out that I may be a social Marxist, and this is more of a journey to understand which way I should vote. And the reason why I'm asking these questions is hopefully in some form of a continual dialogue. Um,
What
I
makes you think you're a social Marxist? What type of mindset do you have that leads you to believe you're promoting Marxism?
I don't know if it's Marxism necessarily. I can definitely say socialist at this point. I think I said Marxist because I've been
Why
called
would
that.
you, okay, if you believe this stuff, I'm trying to figure out what made you start out by asking me why should I vote liberal. These are things you tend to find on the left wing side of the aisle with Bernie Sanders and stuff. I think you're really answering that first question in detail at this point.
Well, I could be. I like to come from the premise of people that have what they believe are answers, and I like to see if I'm going in a direction that well, like that's fully challenged and appropriate. So if you're
Sure.
asking why did I start this conversation itself, it started off by me trying to disprove a platform that I now see that I'm almost 100% on. I'm 80% prepared to vote for this person named Jasmine Sherman, and I guess as far as your name made my questions come up. The handsome liberal. I'm not
Sure.
arguing with you being handsome.
No, I get it.
I am talking about the voting of it in itself. So as far as my ideas of a socialist, I looked at this platform and found that I agreed with a lot of what Jasmine Sherman, who's running for president, stands for, and this would be my second time voting, and I want it to really be a portion of I want it to be something I say I did intentionally, and I can stand on my own 2 feet about it. So that's why I'm asking these
Okay.
questions.
Fair enough. I will tell you this at this point in 2022, I do not believe either party, our two predominant parties being Republican and Democrat, neither party is currently in favor of socialism. However, the Democratic Party would be far closer to that than the Republican Party, because the Republican Party essentially uses socialism as a punchline. They insult it all day, every day. I mean, they throw around socialism like a lot of us throw around racism. So you have no business, based on what you've been telling me during this conversation, even looking at the Republican side of the aisle. They think you're crazy based on what you say. But listen, I'm gonna have to unfortunately end our conversation a little early. I got to get back to work, so
Yeah,
I'm
no
gonna be
problem.
on at 7 tonight. Listen, I'm gonna be on at 7 tonight. Come, I'll
7.
give you priority. Come in the box. I'll put you right on because I would like to finish talking to you.
Yes, sir.
However, I am on lunch break, so you know how that works. So
What time zone?
7 p.m. Central.
Okay. All right. See you there. Take care, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. And real quick, folks, as I
do gotta wrap it up as I do every day this time. Follow the program. I see some folks have been new. Helps out the algorithms. I appreciate the 18,000 likes you guys have bestowed upon me. I asked for 20,000. A lot of patriots in here, and liberals are like, I could not get enough patriots to tap the screen to make 20,000 likes happen. Tim, NOS, appreciate the hot dogs. Thank you very much for your generosity. 7 p.m. Central Time. We're going to be talking a little more about this because I'm real curious to see how us voters, and I assume everybody in here is a voter, that's what we talk about here. H2O, thank you for the generosity. How do you feel about candidates announcing ahead of time that they may not concede even if they lose? And I'm not talking about cases where there's fraud and things like that. Old girl, Susan, shout out to you, like the hearts, much love. I'm talking about folks who just ain't gonna concede. I mean, because right now, when you think about how many races are being ran all over this country, congressional races, Senate, gubernatorial, etc., there's not a hell of a lot of folks complaining about voter fraud going on. I understand there are some people complaining that they're limiting polling places. You got Stacey Abrams down in Georgia saying a few things. They're saying a few things in Ohio and Arizona. But for the most part, there's not a lot of complaints that voter fraud is taking place. Yet, you got candidates all over the damn country talking about they're not going to concede. I want to know, how does that make you feel in regards to electing a candidate that you think that might be best for America? If that candidate saying something like that would affect your vote. Once again, catch you guys at 7 p.m. Central Time. It's your boy Tim, the Handsome Liberal. I got to go.